Okay, if you're a parent, you know this struggle. That daily, never-ending battle over screen time. It's a constant source of stress and, a whole lot of guilt. But what if the way we've been thinking about this whole thing, good versus bad, on versus off, is just wrong? Today, we're going to dig into a totally different way to look at the screen time dilemma. All right, so here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll get a handle on just how big of a deal this is for parents. Then, we're going to pull back the curtain on the psychological tricks that make screens so mesmerizing for kids. After that, we'll dive into why most of those educational apps, well, why they don't really work. From there, we'll figure out what good screen time actually looks like. And we'll wrap up with a really interesting case study on a company using AI to try and fix this whole mess. So let's start right there, with the heart of the problem. This isn't just some small, everyday annoyance. For millions of parents, managing screen time has become one of the biggest sources of conflict and worry, and it's completely reshaping what it means to be a parent today.
I mean, this quote from a parent really just says it all, doesn't it? For so many families, screens aren't about lazy parenting. They're a tool for survival. It's about carving out just a tiny moment of sanity in the absolute chaos of working, running a house, and, raising kids.
And the numbers here are just staggering. We're not talking about a couple of minutes. The average young kid is spending 2.5 hours glued to a screen every single day. Think about that for a second. By the time a kid turns 7, that adds up to an entire year of their life spent looking at a device 24/7.
And you can see here just how deep that parental anxiety goes. A massive 80% of parents are worried about the sheer amount of time their kids are on devices. And right on its heels, 79% are worried about what all that constant stimulation is doing to their children's ability to just focus.
So why is it such a struggle? I mean, it's easy to blame it on a lack of willpower, but the truth is so much bigger than that. The reason kids can't look away is because these platforms are literally designed to be irresistible.
And the idea behind all this has a name: persuasive design. This isn't an accident. It's the deliberate, calculated use of psychology by tech companies to build platforms that are as addictive and habit-forming as possible, especially for brains that are still developing.
So let's break down how this actually works. First, you've got autoplay, right? The next video just starts, so there's no natural moment to stop. Then you have the algorithms, which are constantly learning and feeding kids exactly what will keep them watching. There are also variable rewards, those unpredictable notifications or little prizes in a game that give a little dopamine hit, kind of like a slot machine. And some apps even use emotional manipulation, showing a sad character if you try to leave. It's a really powerful mix.
And YouTube, which a whopping 85% of kids watch, is the absolute master of this. Its algorithm creates a non-stop, irresistible river of content. For a little kid who hasn't developed that grown-up impulse control yet, trying to stop watching is, well, it's almost impossible. So when you're facing this digital fire hose, what do? Well, a lot of parents do the logical thing. They turn to educational apps. They're hoping to make all that screen time productive. But this is where things get really frustrating, and we run right into a paradox.
Yeah, despite all those good intentions, these educational apps almost always fail on the one metric that matters most: getting a kid's attention. Parents download them by the truckload, but the reality is kids just don't stick with them for very long.
I mean, this chart just lays the problem bare. Kids spend nearly 3 times as long on video platforms as they do on educational apps. And the reason's pretty simple, right? Video platforms are built for one thing: pure, non-stop entertainment. Most educational apps, on the other hand, are built around lessons, and they just can't compete for a kid's attention. And honestly, a lot of the time, that failure is baked right into the design. Many of these so-called educational apps are just simple games with a thin layer of learning on top. They're often crammed with distracting ads, or they're just too complicated for a toddler to even use. And at the end of the day, they can never, ever compete with the infinite novelty that a platform like YouTube can serve up. Okay, so this brings us to a really crucial turning point. If trying to fight screens is a losing battle, and educational apps aren't the magic bullet, then what's left? Maybe the goal shouldn't be to get rid of screens, but to fundamentally change the whole experience.
So if just limiting screen time is this constant, exhausting battle, and most of the good apps just fall flat, where does that leave parents? I mean, is all screen time just a write-off? Or is there actually such a thing as good screen time? Well, the experts are pretty clear on this. Top organizations like the American Academy of Pediatrics are basically telling everyone, hey, stop obsessing over the number of minutes. Instead, we need to focus on the quality, not just how much time, but what our kids are watching and how they're watching it. And decades of research show that high-quality screen time really comes down to three things. Pillar number one is content. Is it actually good and age-appropriate? Number two is context. This is all about who's watching with the child. And pillar number three is communication. That's the conversation, the back and forth that connects what's on the screen to the real world. If you can get those three things right, screen time can actually be an amazing tool for learning.
So with that three-pillar framework in mind, let's look at a fascinating case study. There's a company called Kidzovo that's trying to use technology to solve the very problem technology created by building their whole platform around those exact principles.
They started by identifying that core conflict we've been talking about, right? The stuff kids love to watch is super engaging, but it's totally passive. And the stuff that's supposed to be good for them is interactive, but, well, it's often not engaging enough to really hold their attention.
So their solution is built on this really cool and powerful idea. They thought, what if you could create an AI co-viewer? A little digital buddy that asks questions and encourages interaction, basically doing all the things a parent would do, but it does it right inside the videos that kids already know and love.
And check this out, the early results are really compelling. By embedding this AI companion into videos that kids are already engaged with, their data is showing more than double the daily engagement of a typical educational app. It seems like they're actually bridging that critical gap between what kids want to watch and what's actually good for them.
And this really points to a huge shift in how we could approach this whole problem. It suggests a future where our goal isn't just to limit screen time, but to fundamentally upgrade it. Which leaves us with this final, really thought-provoking question. Could we actually use AI not as another distraction, but as a kind of co-pilot to completely transform our kids' relationship with screens, turning them from passive viewers into active learners? The answer to that could redefine what it means to grow up in the digital age.